Everyone being salvaged.
Yeah. Don't worry. Enjoy it.
Okay.
Everyone comes over then after.
We're up to Yudalef with base 3 lines from the bottom. Or 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara over here is discussing how to make a mavui okay. Very briefly, there's a difference between a mavui and a chotza. We're going to discuss quite a bit today, so we'll get this bit clear. A mavui, a chotza is a courtyard which a few houses open up to. A mavui is where a few chatzeros open up into a mavui. There's also a fundamental difference in that a chotza is used for very private things, right? A mavui is a bit like Castlefield Avenue. That's a mavui. A chotza is a bit like the front of MH or basically Saul's garden over here by the gate. But what happens is you do much more private things in the chotza. So it's own private, like a shared back garden or fun garden with a few people. Now in our Mishnah it says that a mavui, how do you make a mavui kosher? If you look very carefully, it's actually 3 opinions in our Mishnah. One opinion was Beis Shammai, you need a lechi and the koher, post and the beam. Shittas Beis Hillel was just lechi or koher. Either or is good enough. Shittas Rabbi Eliezer, 2 lechis. Then the Gemara mentioned previously that there's a man Doma that they only argue when it's more than 4 amas, but not when it's less. And we'll come to all of this in a moment. Now you can ask you a kshay like this. When Eliezer said 2 lechis, was he coming to say like this? When Shammai said a lechin and a koher, he says no, you need 2 lechin and a koher. Or was he saying that you need 2 lechin and then you don't need a koher b'chal? How did you understand Rabbi Eliezer now? So that's the Gemara Shaila. Rabbi Eliezer ima lechin iboilu. Rabbi Eliezer lechin v'koher koma. He meant 2 lechin and a koher. But Dima lechin b'lo koher koma. He meant lechin without a koher. Toshema. The Gemara brings a brayta which goes on a little bit. Ma'aser Rabbi Eliezer sholach etz Rabbi Yossi ben Preda Talmido. He went to Rabbi Yossi ben Preda's Talmid. Top of Yud Beis Amud Aleph. L'Ublin. It's the name of a place. He saw him sitting in a mavui that only had 1 lechi. Omalei b'ni, my son, this is Talmud, speaks to my child, a son. I say lechi ach, and take another lechi. Why? Because I hold, need 2 lechi. Omalei b'chlisis, but I need tzorich. I need to start blocking off my whole garden. Well, you're being so machmir. Omalei yisosim ma bekach. Let it be blocked off, who cares? Now, from this story alone, the Gemara is going to be medayik, but the Gemara generally many times does this when the Gemara starts off with a brayso, so the Gemara brings the entire brayso. The brayso continues. They never argued when it's less than 4 amas that you need nothing. Why? Because if it's less than 4 amas, then it is such a narrow entrance that you don't need anything at all. And we'll discuss that in a minute as well. Ketali Mias. Myself, when the Talmud objected to having 2 lechims, what was his expression? I need to block up my mavui. If Rabbi Eliezer said you need 2 lechem and a koher, we can understand the Talmud's objection. Because he was coming to his Rebbe and says, look, I've got a lechi, I've got a koher, you want another lechi? You expect me to block up it up? Of course, I don't have to do that. And he always lechem. What does it mean to block it up? All he was asking himself, 1 lechid, 2 lechits. Do I need to have 2 lechins? He felt that having 2 lechin was as if blocking off the entire garden. So the Ma'aser Gemara's got no right. And in fact, we're not pushed at that halacha. We don't know, did Rabbi Eliezer mean 2 lechin and a koher or 2 lechin without a koher? And you will not find this discussion in the poskim. Why will we not find this discussion? Because we don't pass lechin. How do we pass him?
No one would hold 2 lechin and a koher.
Why not?
It's not the shit. There's no shit in the Mishnah.
Rabbi Eliezer said 2 lechin. We don't know. Did he mean 2 lechin and a koher, 2 lechin or without a koher? And you won't find a discussion in the poskim. Why we find discussion? Because we don't pass like we're still in any way that they say lechi or koher. Omama, Omar b'shum gamliel. Lo yinechliku b'yishama b'yisin el hamovi shepochis ma'abam sheneserich klum. Less than 4 amas need nothing. It says more, you need nothing. In our Mishnah, the Talmud said that less than 4 amas, everybody agrees you could do or lechi or koher. But nobody said you could do nothing at all. And yet over here, when we're quoting the price, it says less than 4 amas, you don't need anything at all. So Gemara says no. That means when he said you need nothing at all, he meant you need the minimum, which is either lechi or kira. And therefore there's no contradiction between the Bryce and the Mishnah. And therefore it comes out like this. According to that Talmud, which we don't pass on like, it's almost in the gap, up to 4 amas, everybody agrees need or lechi or kira. More than 4 amas, that's when the machloka starts. More than 4 amas, we have 3 opinions. Lechi or kira, that's Beisilel. Lechi and kira is Beishamai. And shtei lechim according to Ablezer, and we don't know that it means 2 lechim with a kir, without a kir. The camel. Here it was a very important halacha. Omav achli betima v'chir adar po. Let's try and memorize this because it's going to come back to us. That only up to 4 tefachim, meaning if you've got a mavui where the entrance is less than 4 tefachim, you don't need not a lechi, not a kir, nothing. So you've got 3 shiur. More than 10 amas, nothing works. A lechi and a kir doesn't work. Do you remember, where did we see that more than 10 amas a lechi kir doesn't work? Where did we see lechi and kir doesn't work more than 10 amas? Where did we see that? The first Mishnah Eiruvin. That the Mishnah says a kira which is wider than 10 amas is no good. You have to remind it. So the first Mishnah told us more than 10 amas is no good. Less than 10 amas, more than 4 amas. Beis Hillel say you need lechi or kira. The Shammai say you need a lechi and kira. Says up to lechi. Less than 4 amas up to 4 tefachim. We have the machlokas in the machlokas. According to Rabbi Akiva, it's the same question as more than 4 amas. According to the Talmud of Rabbi Shmuel, it says everybody agrees in the lechi or kira. But less than 4 tefachim, everybody agrees that you need nothing at all. So let's remember it again. Less than 4 tefachim, you need nothing. More than 4 tefachim, up to 4 amas, you only need a lechi or kira, or some say you need a lechi and a kira. Up to 10 amas, everybody agrees to go machlokas, 3 opinions, lechi or kira, lechi and kira, or shtei lechi. More than 10 amas, it won't work. And the Rishonim are bothered. Let me just finish off a tiny bit. The Rishonim are bothered one point. An entrance of a movie, which is less than 4 tefachim, is such a narrow. It's nothing. It's not a movie. So they show you a picture, which is good to see it. I can show it to you inside. You'll see it. It is, surprisingly enough, not in this. So I must have sent it to Pirush Chai. I'm sorry. The Pirush Chai has got a picture of it. I did have the Pirush Chai here. 1 second. If you want. It's a very simple thing, and I don't think it's just the problem is that how can you have? So it wasn't. I definitely saw it on the picture books. Had a very nice picture. How could you have a mobile less than 4 tefachim? Sorry. So you've all got it in yours. It's the art school. It's got a nice picture. Tolly, can you pick it up? Wait, you based on with Aleph. Oh, very good. Sorry, I'm sorry for staring only. Here, can you see the picture? It's what happens is the entrance of the mobile is less than 4 tefachim. Now it's in. Show it about. Sorry. Oh, if you can. So what happens is the entrance is less than 4 tefachim. But after that, it gets bigger. What?
I've got right there, but Les doesn't hold the chaim and a kira. So if you would have it, then it'd be like a tourist pesach, and then therefore we couldn't have more than 10 amas.
I hear. Not necessarily, because you can have 2 lechim with the kir not touching the 2 lechim.
Generally, with the pasta, now you don't have to touch.
So they could be the non top of each other.
Maybe
not on top of each other. The 2 lechim in one place, the kir somewhere else. That means. Yes, there's such a thing. Since the Gemara didn't bring a raya, so I have to force to say that he wanted it. Okay, let's remember it. What did he say if I wake up in the night? If it's less than 4 tefachim, what do you need? Nothing. Okay. Says the Gemara. I've lost the place now. Oh. Omar Shishis Omar Yimir Baba. We're up to about 8 lines from the now lines. Omar Shishis Omar Yimir Baba Marab. Boidim Chacham Nabeleza Pasechotza. Till now we talk about Movik. By a chotza, they agree that you need 2 lechim. Did you hear that? You need 2 lechim. They agree with it. That means it's not enough to have on one side, like a mob, you need to have 2. They're both saying the same halacha, but it's slightly different nuances. One man says they all agree that you need to have 2 panels. The other man says, not that they all agree, but that the halacha is they need 2 panels. It's the same halacha, but when I say they all agree, what I'm saying, there was never an argument about the topic. When I say the halacha is you need 2 panels, what I'm saying, there was an argument, but that's the halacha. Says the Gemara, now the word just is medayik what we just explained. Omar Nachman by Yitzchok, man moedim, who's the moedim? Rebbe. Rebbe is moedim that you need to have 2. Halach b'chad de pligi man paligale, who's one who argues? Rabbanon. And the more brings a bright, which says it clearly, the Tanya, chotz niteres b'pas echot. The Chachamim say that how many panels you need by a chotz of 1. Comes along Rebbe Yomi b'shnei pasin, you need to have 2. So therefore we're going b'shittas Rebbe that you need to have 2. So by a mavui, 1 is enough, by a chotz you need 2. Omar b'Yechanan, chotz tzricha shnei pasin. A chotz needs to have 2 panels. You can't do 1, you have to do 2. Oh no, the Yechanan say they need 2. Till now, we've always been talking about a movi. A movi works with a lechi. A lechi is a post. By chotza, we say pasin. Pasin means a panel. What's the difference between a post and a panel? A post does not need to have any thickness. One small stick can be a post, right? Goal post, right? You make a goal post, you can make a goal post 1 stick up, 1 stick along, 1 stick down. You got yourself a goal post. But a panel has to be of certain width. Rabbi Yechanan holds that pasei chotza have to be 4 tvachim. Now let's see, we had 2 statements from Rabbi Yechanan. Statement number 1, you need to have 2 pasim. 1's not enough. It's not like by movi, we pass like this, so that you can do a lechi on one side or another. By chotza, you have to have 2. Second statement is that they have to be how wide? 4 tvachim. Now we had the Gemara previously, which we really examined. The chotza gedolah that goes with the chotza ketana. Remember the picture? A small chotza, the big chotza. The halach is: are you allowed to carry the big chotza? Yes. Why allowed to carry the big chotza? Because you've got the walls inside. How much bigger was the big chotza than the small chotza? 1 amma bigger. 11 ammas to 10 ammas. 1 amma bigger is generally 3 tefachim on each side. Now, if you take the 2 statements of Yechanan together, then you need to have 2 pasim, 2 panels, and that each panel has to be 4 tefachim. It doesn't work. So he said, how can you tell me that Yechanan said you need to have 4 tefachim? It's not true. Sorry, how can you say Yechanan said you need to have 2 panels? Yechanan said you need to have 2, each panel has to be 4 tefachim. If they each have to be 4 tefachim and you're going to have 2 panels, let's see inside. Again, Omri Avzir Avasi, second line for the end of the 15 lines. Mi Omar Yechanan, he did Yechanan say you need to have 2 panels. But you yourself said Yechanan pasachos shechad ben abo. And if you say, okay, okay, 4 tefachim on each side. That the big one is 11 ammas, the small one is 10 ammas, which means that you've only got 1 amma bigger. If it's only 1 amma bigger, you can't possibly have 2 panels, each for the 4 tefachim. It doesn't work. Answers the Gemara, we say it outside. That Rabbi Yechanan 2 statements were not in addition, but they were optional, one or the other. Meaning, either you have 1 panel of 4 tefachim, or you have 2 panels and each one can be a mashu. So therefore now it's not a contradiction. Either you have a panel of 4 tefachim, and then you only need 1, or you have 2 panels, each one could be a minimum. Says more. When Abzera came out of the sea, Pilshe explained it. If you only have on one side, that Mishnah, which we explained, that is 11 ammas to 10 ammas, where each side is 3 tefachim. That is Rebbe according to Rabbi Yossi. Rebbe holds, if you remember a minute ago, we said Rebbe holds you always have to have 2 panels. And Rabbi Yossi is one who says it has to be a minimum of 3 tefachim. So therefore, according to him, indeed, you have to have 11 to 10. But according to Rabbi Yechanan, how much wider does the chotza gedolah need to be than the chotza ketana according to Rabbi Yechanan? 2 mashos. According to Rabbi Yechanan, you need to have either, for chotza to be kosher to carry in, either you have a panel on one side of 4 tefachim, on either side of a mashu. Omar Yisrael, we'll continue in this vein. Omar Yisrael, Omar Yehuda Mashmor, chotz niteres pasechot. You're allowed to use just 1 panel. If you go a chotz, you can use 1 panel. Omar Yisrael, Yom Mashmor, Ochi, Omar Yishmol av Chananya, ba'asher la'akle sabit uvdo. Don't ever permit a chotz, elo oibe vo'ivdoif and oibe shnei pas. You need to have 2 panels, or at least that the one panel should be the majority of the area of the opening. So you see over here clearly they need 2 panels. How can you say in the name of Shmuel that you need only one? Of Shmuel himself says you need 2. So it's a contradiction in Shmuel, which the Gemara is going to tackle later. Let's get it clear. And now Moyer came along and said in the name of Shmuel, how many panels do you need to have? Only 1. Furthermore, he didn't say that. He said you need 2, or they should cover the majority of the entrance. It's a contradiction. So the Gemara now goes off into it. I don't know. Somebody told me that there's only 2 places in Shas, I don't know this myself, that this village is quoted. Here, we had it earlier, that Dura Usa, that they had it what's the word for it? What was the story of the Dura Usa? It was 2 times in Shas. Dura Usa means a town of all of them were shepherds. What was the other place? Zion with base? Oh, that's how it was above definition of the Vachva. Very good. Only 2 places. It was a town only of shepherds. No, it was Kitsa, there was this town of shepherds. And there's a complicated story. Let's look at the picture. And I just want to point out there's 2 pictures. Therefore, let's see if you can upload both, Taka. We're talking about a little mavoi. Oh, it says picture Kuf Chavov and Kuf Chav Tes, if you can see both pictures. Basically, you have a mavoi, Kuf Chavav and Kuf Chav Tes. You have a mavoi, and the tide, when the tide would come in, the river would come in, it would go into the mavoi, right? Imagine, like a town like Venice, I suppose, or imagine that Leicester Road would not be a road, it would be a river. And Castlefield Avenue would have water coming in. Can you imagine such a thing? Have you uploaded both pictures, Tolly?
Yeah, what's the difference?
Oh, what's the difference? In Kuf Chavov, there's nothing left. In Kuf Chav Tes, there's 2 panels. And Rashi makes a big fuss about the differences between the 2 pictures. Okay. Oh, does it? Okay. So this town had water coming in, and Rashi explains that they did not have anything left. The water came in, and there was no walls on either side. It literally flooded the Mobi. Loshen Yam, the tongue of the sea, it means the river, whatever it's an expression. And Nichnes lechatzana. Only if it needed one. Omalei. Loshen Yam kamas kalush kiluch chamemai. Chazal had to, like we had it once for Pasipi voice, in the olden days, getting water was a huge, huge effort. Every time you get a drink from the tap, the middle used to say, thank you to Hashem, but we have taps. Imagine how much effort it would be if we didn't have taps. Right. So they always had to make a heter. So if you already don't mind, if you've already got the picture up, take a picture of Kuf Chav Zayin, Kuf Chav Ches, because we're going to come to it in a second. Chazal needed to allow people for water to be matter. That means they were happy that the water came into the mob, because they needed to drink that water. Now, if you're going to say that just because the water came in, the whole chot says also, that's make a kula. So again, so he said, the river you're talking, kalush kilu chamemim. You've got a broken down wall. And if you've got a picture that is picture Kuf Chav Zayin, a broken down wall. Rashi says that really the question could have been asked by any wall. But why do we talk about broken down wall? Because usually broken down walls are not level at the ground. Most walls, look at this wall, the wall reaches the bottom. If you come back in 100 years' time, you might find the bottom of the walls are broken away, and therefore it's hanging in there. So a wall which is hanging in there, is that a good wall or not? What would you say? So that's what he asked him. Only with water. So if you look at the picture very carefully, it's a complicated picture. What happened was a person would live and he would need water on Shabbos. How would you get water on Shabbos? So he had a balcony and he would lower the bucket into the river and draw water. Now the problem is the water was Rosh Hashanah and his house is Rosh Hashanah and he's carrying water from a carbonate and some say Rosh Hashanah into his own house. So what you do is you make a wall in the water. So what you do is the best thing to have done is to actually make an enclosure in the water and build it from your house all the way into the water. But that would require a tremendous amount of effort. Like a keli mikveh, yes, like a keli mikveh. But that would require a tremendous amount of effort. So Chazal said, as long as there's 10 tefachim, that green piece, if you can see it's green, has to be 10 tefachim high. So it's 10 tefachim high, and we imagine as if it's going all the way into the water. And now when you're going into the water, so therefore you, regardless of how big it is, because it's mechitza tluya, a hanging mechitza. So we see that by water we will make the shaila is, why don't we say gudachis? Gudachis means goes down. Over here we don't say gudachis. The reason we don't say gudachis is that not by sukkah, because it has to be a big, over here it's a big gap. Big gap, we don't say gudachis. So Moses says we come back in kasha. Let's summarize what we said so far. Rabbi Yosef came along and said that Shmuel says, how many panels do you need? 1. Said to him, Rabbi Yosef, how can you say such a thing? So Rabbi said, how can you say such a thing? You need 2. So then the Gemara went on a tangent about this village of shepherds where they only required 1. The Gemara says, don't bring me any proof from that story, because they was required about water by water we're more making. But Amai says, you've got a contradiction in Shmuel. Once he said you need 1 panel, once he said you need 2 panels. Answers the Gemara the same answer as we had before. What's the same answer as before? It depends. 1 panel of 4 tvachim or 2 panels of a mashu. So Gemara says like this. Also, a papa of Yehuda when they came back from the Beis Hamedrash, the words with Bei Rav doesn't mean necessarily the Beis Hamedrash of Rav. In fact, the papa didn't learn Bei Rav. The papa was the 3rd generation of Amorim, and Rav was the 1st. So he couldn't possibly learn from Rav. When he went to the Beis Hamedrash of Rav, Pirshua explained it. Ruach achas, if it's only on one side, you need 4 tvachim, shnei ruchos mashu kan mashu lekan. This I do have difficulty. Actually, it's with the uvda levoiv for the mishneh pass. You have to have a majority or 2 panels. Now he said, when do you need 2 panels? When do you need 2 panels? Only if none of the panels are 4 tvachim. Because if one of the panels is 4 tvachim, then it's good enough. So when do you need 2 panels? If they're 3 and 3, or 2 and 2, 1 and 1. Now, he said that if one of them covers the majority, then it's okay. Now, the normal entrance of a marble would be, let's say, 5 amas. So if it covers the majority, how big would it be? 3 amas. 3 amas is how many tefachim? 18 tefachim. So forget about the fact that it covers the majority. It's already more than 4 tefachim, so it's okay. You hear the question again? We said that when he said that you need 2 panels, it's only if it's a mashu. If one of the panels is 4 tefachim, that's okay. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, I don't understand the cheshbon. Why did you have to say to him, use either 2 panels or majority? You don't need the majority. You should have said 2 panels or 4 tefachim, because the majority is certainly going to be much more than 4 tefachim. When is the majority less than 4 tefachim? Oh, very good. When the mob is so narrow that you don't need it. Says the Gemara. Again. Normally, again, he said to Kashni Hokashi. Normally, I'm sure I've had about this have no delay with different state passing. Normally, with different passable sagi, should have said 4. With different shiva. We're talking about where the whole mob was only 7 tefachim wide. So if he wanted to tell him that if you've got 3 3/4, that's good enough, which is a bigger chiddush. Again, he could have told him either 2 panels or 1 panel of 4 tefachim. But he was talking about a mobile which is so narrow that it's only 7 tefachim wide. So therefore, you want to tell him the majority is just over 3.5, let's say 3 3/4, where it's not even 4 tefachim, and even so, it's okay. So that's why he didn't want to tell him about 4 tefachim. He wanted to tell him a bigger chiddush with the majority of 7. What's the problem of that? Anybody can work? Then how much is left? If it's 3 3/4, and the whole entrance is 7, 3 1/4. Right, 3 3/4 plus 3 1/4. 3 1/4 tefachim, you don't need anything. Because we said before that when you've got an entrance of 4 tefachim or less, you don't need anything at all. So the Gemara says, if you're going to tell me, you should just say 3 and a bit. You need 4. You do need, even if it's less than 4 tefachim. But this heter that less than 4 tefachim, you don't need a panel, is only in a mavoi, but the chotzer you do need. So therefore, that's why it's not shver. So it's quite complicated. Shmuel came along and said you can choose one of two options. 3 options you've actually got Remaisa for Movi. What are the 3 options you've got for Movi? For Chotza? 2 panels of a Mashu, 1 panel of 4 Tvachim, 1 panel which is the majority. What's the case where majority is not 4 Tvachim? Where the entrance is less than 7. But if the entrance is 7 and you're going to have, even if you don't need to have majority, just do 3, you've got less than 4. Well, it's either Rachlis Machloikas, or by Chotza we're more Machnim. A tongue of the sea, a stream of the water that goes into the Chotza. Ein normal in the middle of Shabbos. Elim kedish mechitza k'vei asot. Tefachim unless you've got a mechitza of 10 tefachim. That means you've got to have a mechitza of 10 tefachim going in. But medva mamoy shpiltz yoyis me'esa, where the opening is more than 10 amos. But esa ein tzarich kelom. You don't need anything. And Rashi explains why don't you need anything? Because here we're talking about where you've got a panel on each side. That's the second picture which we put up. That's picture of Choftes. Where what happens is you've got a panel on each side. So therefore up to 10 amos it's okay. Says you're not allowed to fill, meaning you're not allowed to take water out of the water that came in. Why? Because you're taking water that came from a counter into your chotzer. But kind within the chotzer itself sounds like it's okay. But if it's a chotzer in the end of the day, by this water flooding in, it's got rid of the wall and therefore it's posed from loyal. And even if Rashi says, even if according to where I explained it, that there's bits of walls on each side, but it's still no good because we're talking about a case where it's more than 10 amas. More than 10 amas, it doesn't help you to have panels on each side. Why is it different from shus? That's where we here we talk, because of the entrance of more than 10 amas, so therefore the fact that you've got panels on each side doesn't help you. Answers the Gemara top of the base on base. The Isle Gedude that it has fences. It has fences, ridges. Since it has fences, that means even when the water floods in, it still has fences. Only the water goes over the fence, but it does still have a fence. 10 tefachim. Okay, new topic over here. If we're less than 10 tefachim, we'll be no good because it's nifats more than 10 amas, it will be good. Let's do a little bit like this. We said like this. The first mission Eiruvin tells us, you've got Mobi, which we said is closed on 3 walls. Then on the 4th wall, you have to make it mutter. How do you make it mutter? We passed in Lechi Okeva. What does a Lechi Okeva do? Why is it mutter when you've got a Lechi Okeva? So you could argue that a Lechi Okeva is a wall. Now, it doesn't look like a very good wall, just having a beam here or post there. You could say that Chazal held like a wall, like Lobod, like anything else. It's a wall. Or you could say it's not a wall at all. All it is a hecker. That means it reminds people this is different from a normal rishus. What would the nafkamina be? Nafkamina would be like this. Let's imagine that you're not allowed to carry from rishus to rishus hayachid. And let's imagine that you held that a rishus hayachid that only has 3 walls is not a rishus hayachid. It's not a proper rishus hayachid. It's got 3 walls. 4 walls are rishus hayachid. 3 walls are not. So you'd be allowed to carry from rishus hayachid to an area which only has 3 walls because it's not rishus hayachid. It doesn't have 4 walls. Came along somebody and added a lechi or koyah to that 3 walls. Would he now be allowed to carry from Rosh Hashanah into this? Minatayah would be also, of course, but Minatayah would be allowed to carry into this area. If you say lechi and koyah works as a wall, so now you've got 4 walls. So you would not be allowed to carry from Rosh Hashanah into there because now you've got a real 4 walls. If you say that only works as hecker, so you've only got 3 walls, and if 3 walls is not considered a Rosh Hashanah, you'd still be allowed to carry from the Shusavim into that. I want to explain this again because it's very fundamental. It's a big machlokes. How many walls of Shusavim need? 2, 3, 4. That's machlokes. Harmless or something. And they only ask me again. We've got a Movi that has 3 walls. The Mishnah tells us you can put a lechi or a koyah. What does a lechi or a koyah do? There are 2 ways to understand it. Either lechi and koyah works as a mechitza. For example, imagine coming to say to you, I want to build a sukkah made out of lechi. Would you say it's okay or not? So Tais asks us as a shaila and Daf Chesamud base. A bit of a long Tais says to ask the shaila, can you use it? And Tais again also later talks about it, much later. It's a big topic, can you or not? So the answer, you shook your head straight away, not. You should have said to me, no, it depends. If lechi and koyah works as a mechitza, so then I can declare that maybe it should work for mechitza for sukkah as well. If it works only as hecker, then of course it won't work for sukkah, right? So now, the same shai which I just said makes another nafkamina. Carrying from Rishus Rabim into a movi that has a lechi and a koyah. Would it be awesome in our Torah or not? If you say Lecha is only a heker, and 3 walls is not real Shusay Yochid, so what does it matter? I've not done anything bad. It's not got 4 walls. If you say Lecha is a wall, so now I've done something to 4 walls. This is the next topic. So the wall says, Omar Yehuda, Movi shouldn't start for it. Movi never did the Ruvei Chatzeros in silence. Echshive belechi, and then you put up a lechi. If you throw into it, you're chayav. Why? He held that a lechi is a real wall. Since it's a real wall, you've now got 4 walls and it's awesome. If you put just a beam, you understand the whole reason why you're allowed to potter if you throw into a room, into a movi which has a keva, is because it's not a real wall. But if they did an Eiruvin, and therefore it belongs now to one person, and it's like a shituf, it becomes like a proper Shusay Yochid. Because the proper Shusay Yochid, you'd be chayav, does shituf mevois? What does shituf mevois mean? If you've got a few courtyards opening up into a cul-de-sac, so the halacha is that in our Torah we say it, and again, the Chazal said you're not allowed to carry into the cul-de-sac. Why? Because you're carrying from your private home into the cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sac belongs to a lot of people. You do an Eruv, it's all as if we're all one big happy family, and therefore now you're allowed to carry. Do you mean that creates it, and only the loaf of bread makes it a Shusay Yochid? Of course not. But Tanya, Chatzer Shel Rabim, an area where many, many people go through, and a mobi which is not open into Shusay Yochid, either way, you're chayav. What's the logic of this price? The Bais is teaching us a very fundamental thing. I've mentioned this once before. Imagine a base medrash like Mir, where you've got thousands of people coming into it every day. Shusay Yochid or Shusay Rabim? What is it? Shusay Yochid. That's what the Bais is teaching us. Oh, there's no Eiruvin voice, there's shituf voice, everything else. Who cares? At the end of the day, it is a Shusay Yochid. So he says to him, your whole definition of Shusay Yochid or Shusay Rabim is incorrect. It has nothing to do with whether you've done shituf or not done shituf. So the Gemara says like this: but we have to correct what he said. A mavui that you can't do shituf. Why can't you do shituf? Because it says open up into Shusay Rabim, and since it's open up into Shusay Rabim, so therefore it's considered you need to have a doorway. Without a doorway, you can't do shituf. If you just put a lechi, then you're chayav. Why? Because he holds that a lechi is like a proper wall. He holds that a lechi works as a wall, a kir works as heker. So therefore, when you throw into something which has a lechi, you're chayav because a lechi is considered the proper wall, and a kir only works as a heker. So therefore, it's not considered the proper wall. It's only a heker, and it's not considered a wall. That's what the Gemara says. So again, so we've got over here a machlokas. What does a lechi or a kira do? We've had actually a few nafkaminas about what a lechi and a kira does, but this is another nafkamina. Another nafkamina is: does it work? Does it make it asa for a person to carry from Shusay Rabim into an area which has a lechi or a kira? Says the Gemara, if a person throws into a mavui, if it has a lechi chayav, ain't a lechi potter. Clearly says that a lechi creates into a Shusay Yochid. So what do we see that lechi works as what? Lechi makes a Shusay Yochid. So what is lechi? It's a wall. It's a mechitza. It's not just a heker. Because if lechi would only be a heker, so then you can't say that once it's got a lechi makes a chayav, without a lechi it's potter. If lechi is only a heker, it's only like a signal. So it's not a wall. If it's only a signal, so why should it make a difference to make a chayav or pot if you can't push the Rabim into it? Answers G'Machikama. If we're talking about a movi, which is a good movi, meaning it's a closed-off movi, and therefore all you need to make it mutter is a lechi, as if it's a chayav, it's a proper Shusay Yochid, therefore you throw it to a chayav. Lechi v'davach, if it is a lechi and a doorway, meaning it's a lechi and a fullash, as if it's a pot. The world's changing quite fundamentally the words of the Brisa. There are 2 kinds of movi. Movi which is a closed movi, like a cul-de-sac, and a movi which is open, like let's say King's Road, assuming very new and very old both for Shusay Rabim. The halacha is, a movi which is closed, what do you need? A lechi or a kir. A movi which is open, what do you need? So we said either doors or tzuras Pesach, it eats much more. Says the Gemara, when the Brisa says that if it's got a lechi, you're chayav. When it's got no lechi, you're potter, it doesn't mean that a lechi makes a wall or doesn't make a wall. Of course not. Rather, when it's got a lechi means that all it needs is to have a lechi, and then it would be mutter. I.e., we're talking about a movi which is closed, and therefore a movi which is closed is considered a proper shayach. It's a kaif b'shlabim into it is forbidden. Hashein kain, if it is open movi, which is therefore it needs more than a lechi, that if you throw in from shayach into a movi and mefulash, you are not chayav because a movi mefulash is not a shayach. Esvei, yes, sir, okay. We've had this Rabbi Yehuda a number of times. A number of times. We're going to have him again a number of times. Rabbi Yehuda's famous chiddush is that he holds that 2 walls makes a Rishus HaYachid. I've said this before, I'll end up saying it again. That if you've got a motorway and it's got a bridge over the motorway, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you'd be allowed to carry in the motor under the bridge. Why? What is a bridge? 2 walls and a platform on top. He holds that the 2 walls makes it to Rishus HaYachid. So if you're driving on M620, you stop by underneath the bridge, that is a Rishus HaYachid because it's got 2 walls. In the Havamina, the Gemara understood not like that. In the Havamina, the Gemara understood that Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you need to have 4 walls. You need to have 4 walls. So why does he hold that you're allowed to? If you don't mind, look at the picture. Kuf Lamed Beis and Kuf Lamed Gimel. Or Kuf Lamed Beis and Kuf Lamed Gimel. Are both cases which Rabbi Yehuda says that you're allowed to carry. You're allowed to carry in both of these cases. In Kuf Lamed Beis, you've got Rishus HaRabim going down, and all you did was made a lechi on one side, a lechi on the other. Or in Kuf Lamed Gimel, you made a beam on one side, a beam on the other. Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to carry. Why are you allowed to carry according to Rabbi Yehuda in Kuf Lamed Gimel? Oh, that is the answer in truth. But the Gemara in the Havamina understood that that's not the reason. What's more thinking in the Havamina? What's more thinking the Havamina?
It's like
a mechitza. So therefore, if you've got a lechi on both sides or kör on both sides, how many walls do you have? 4. Is a raya that what is lechi and kör? A mechitza. Says the Gemara, let's inside. Esve, yes, okay, no more Yehuda, Misha, stay bottom, stay to do Shabim. Is a lechi, can. When they say allowed to carry, the one that haven't understood. And the Chachamim objected because you can't make an aim with the Shabim. So you see clearly that an lech and a kör works mechitza. I just want to know you misunderstood Rabbi Yehuda completely. Awesome, because some Rabbi Yehuda shtei mechitzas do nice. He holds that 2 walls, that's enough for that. Not that the lechi and kör serve as walls. The lechi and kör serve only as signals, only as signs, only as a heka. Only 2 walls is enough. In the Havamina, the Gemara understood that 2 walls can't be enough. You need 4 walls. And the Gemara understood that lechi and the kör serve as walls. The Gemara says, no, that's not what Rabbi Yehuda meant altogether. Rabbi Yehuda meant that you need 2 walls. And why did the lechi and kör only as a reminder that this is Rosh Hashanah?
How does it make it from a Kamis to Rosh Hashanah?
Again, it's not Rosh Hashanah.
We've all right that for that, like carry from a Rosh Hashanah to a Kamis, and then you put lechi and kör there, and you kind of lechi and kör makes you kind.
The Gemara was doing that. That's we're talking about a movi which is not mefulish, or movi which is mefulish. Now, the question like this is, how do you define is something a movi or a chotzer? Not so easy. Oh. Right, so the Gemara now tells us some of the definitions between a movi and a chotzer. The Gemara is like this. If it's a square, its length is like its width, it's considered a chotzer, not a movi. A movi has to be rectangle, not a square. Because that's the shape, that's what it's meant for. It's meant for to have a few chatzers coming off. A chotzer can be like a square in front of houses. If it's exactly a square, you can't use it. Not before we talked about lechi. Now it says you can't use a kör either. How great and how accurate are these Gemaras? Why? Of these Savi means the elders, because both of these are Morim were his elders. The chotzer is not much of a you have to have a pass. The Gemara asks a kasha that if you said by a chotza, you can't use a lechi. Why can't you use a lechi? A lechi, now having the Gemara understood that a pass, a panel has no shiur. If a pass has no shiur, so every lechi should automatically be a panel. And they have to be food for him. And the more explains that it has to be longer than white. What is a chotzer which is no good? You have to have a panel of full. If it's square. And more than having to ask if it's a circle, that doesn't make it a chotzer, of course not. Then the afkibud is not whether it's a square or a circle. The afkibud is it used as a chotzer, as a movui? That means like this. If it is a movui which is longer more than its wide, then it's a movui and it's got houses and chetzers opening up onto it, then all you need is a lechi and a koyot, or a koyot. If it's not that, then it makes no difference if it's circle, square, or anything like that. Once it's not a movui, then it's a chotzer. Once it's a chotzer, then you need to have a border of 4 tefachim coming out. Now, the Gemara says that a movui has to be longer than it is wide. So the Gemara says like this for camel. How much longer does it need to be than wide? It has to be twice the length. The length has to be twice its width. So said my uncle. Chavivi means my uncle. That's Obchir, Afilu Mashu, even a Mashu. Means as long as the movui is even a tiny bit longer than the width, that is okay, and that is how we pass them. So therefore, a movui is mutter. Now, Maisa nowadays, if you look about it, we rely what's called Suras HaPesach. We don't really rely so much on lechis and kivas and so thing. What we do is we make sure to have a string going over the posts. And what happens is people think when they see these posts that these are lechim. Not really lechim. They're Suras HaPesach. You have to just make sure that the post goes over. So I mentioned what happens is they have these big metal, circular, like cylinder shapes, and they have a big, and a lamppost coming out of it, and then a string goes from lamppost from post to post. And you'd always be very careful to make sure that the string, the wire, would go over these cylinders. As long as it goes over the cylinders, that's okay, because then it's considered the source of Pesach. Or they don't have a
lamppost and then a weld on it.
That's only probably to make it wider in case the string moves a little bit. And
the actual pole is considered
no.
They have one lamppost straight
right,
and then they weld onto it.
That is because the wire is not always wires move a little bit. Having a post, you're making sure that if the wire moves, it's still over the post. The Maisa, and then you also have it source of Pesach, it is okay. Okay, we'll stop over here because it's when they use sugya and try to daf. Tomorrow's daf is a lot easier. Today's daf was a complicated daf. Tomorrow, Mr. Shem will be starting straight after Shach. It's a very good chodesh. Big questions.
Where are we getting to tomorrow?